Hi guys, Dr. Sean here, and we're back into our mailbag again, and this is an interesting one from a gentleman. He's asking me about sleep apnea, erectile dysfunction, and benign prostatic hypertrophy, or an inflamed prostate, and how they kind of all correlate together. And it does, and that's what's interesting about this. Now, let's start with the sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is where you fall asleep at night, you're resting, and all of a sudden you're breathing, and all of a sudden you stop. And then you start again in your body. So it goes to this rhythm. It's lost the ability to control normal respiration. Now, it can have a pretty heavy effect on the ticker over time. And that's one of the downsides to having the apnea, is that it can definitely affect circulation and affect heart function. So they use a lot of CPAPs and machines, and you have to wear this apparatus when you go to bed at night. Now, what's interesting about sleep apnea, and what I've noticed, is that when nobody starts with it, you acquire it, and this is really key to what we're about to go to. Go to ED. Now we're looking at erectile dysfunction. Nobody starts with that. You acquire it. We go into benign prostatic hypertrophy. Don't start with that. We acquire it. So this comes into the interesting part of this. These are all three very unique things that we somehow acquire through life. We don't start with them. You don't catch a wild case of benign prostatic hypertrophy. You don't get infected with it, right? It just happens. So we know that if it's an acquired condition, it's very, very possible that it's degenerative in nature. That means it's a wear and tear problem. The body is under some kind of a chronic stress or irritation that is not being met. It's not being dealt with properly. And so systems start to fail. The respiratory system, hence the apnea. The ED, now you're looking at reproductive type things. The benign prostatic hypertrophy, now you can get urination issues and bladder issues. It can eventually lead to bladder cancers and prostate cancers. All these things can occur because there's some kind of a dysfunction going on in the body. So where do you start with something like this? What do you do with it? You have to examine. I start out always with a 24-hour UA, especially when you're dealing with these conditions. You do the 24-hour UA, it gets you in the ballpark. So you know, what am I looking at here? Is the body sending some flag up in the digestive system that I'm just ignoring because I got these other things going on? Because the body has to get parts to heal. So if you're eating a diet but you can't use it, you're not absorbing it, you're not digesting it well, you can't heal. So you've got to make sure the body can get the parts. The next thing you start looking at then is saying, okay, what are these things? Now, sleep apnea responds extremely well to losing weight. If you can keep the weight down, the apnea does well. Ironically, snoring, of all things, does really well with losing weight. And when you don't snore, get a really stressful day sometime. Stay up too late, get super stressed out, and see if you don't snore that night. There's a link. Respiration, breathing, snoring, apnea, there's a link. The liver gets involved. You'll see the respiratory system gets involved, and stress, whether it is emotional stresses, sometimes mechanical ones, it can be something of a nutritional variety. They start to wear the body down. And then it exhibits these problems. So you go through things like this and you say, all right, if I clean up the diet, balance my blood sugar, which helps the body to keep the cortisol levels neutral. That stops the swings, which then helps control anxiety and depression, and that helps control my emotions and my moods. It allows me to rest more thoroughly. You can bring in other adjunct therapies, which I do in my practice a lot. I bring in some type of a neurofeedback technique, maybe a vibrational medicine or something, some type of an acupuncture technique to help control these things. And ironically, of all things, mechanical work has to be done. In sleep apnea patients, I see a lot of upper cervical problems, a lot of things going on in the upper part of the neck. In prostate issues, you're always going to see some problem with what they call neurologic feedback loop. It's a tipped prostate, for lack of better words. You'll always see it. It'll always be positive. If you correct those things, give the body the nutrition it needs to control inflammation or any kind of deficiency that may be going on, support the systems that are weak, and the urine and your exam tell you that, you can perform absolute